My name is Nathan Hochman. I'm the District Attorney of Los Angeles County. Today I am announcing that the LA County District Attorney's Office will be aggressively going after all fraudsters. District Attorney on December 3rd. We have put in the hard work to understand the Menendez case. We've reviewed over 50,000 trial transcript pages from 2 months-long trials that the Menendezes had back in the early 1990s. We also have spoken to defense attorneys. Today I'm here to announce that our office will be filing charges against Nick Reiner, who is accused of killing his parents, actor-director Rob Reiner, and photographer-producer Michelle Singer Reiner.
Hey, crazy, amazing humans. You just heard a pretty high-charged intro to our podcast, but welcome to the world of our next guest. Today, we're sitting down with a man whose decisions impact the lives of nearly 10 million people every single day. As the elected District Attorney of Los Angeles County, Nathan Hochman represents 1/4 of California's population. To put that into perspective, he has more constituents than the governors of 40 U.S. states.
Oh, that's a lot of people.
That is.
That's a massive operation, and it covers over 4,000 square miles and a team of 2,100 employees, including 1,000 prosecutors and hundreds of victim services representatives. But behind those staggering numbers are real human stories.
That's right. Nathan, we're so fortunate to have you in the studio today, a fellow Brown grad, doing our alma mater proud. Thank you so much for being here. We know your schedule is relentless, so let's dive right in. Nathan Hochman, welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be here.
We're so happy to have you here. So, Nathan, before you were even elected as the Los Angeles DA, you built a 35-year distinguished career that spanned both the highest levels of U.S. government, like working in Washington, D.C., as Assistant Attorney General of the United States, as well as serving as Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Central District of California, getting these things right? And you had an extensive career in private practice. So there's so many things we could brag on about you, but we're going to leave that to your incredible bio that we're going to have on our Crazy Amazing Humans website.
Right. And I want to encourage our listeners to check it out because it is impressive.
It sure is.
And in Crazy Amazing Humans fashion, we're going to go in depth with some of your philanthropic endeavors, which are also wide-ranging, but that's coming up.
That's right. So first, Nathan, we're going to talk about where you are here and now as the District Attorney of Los Angeles County. Now, we've all heard the term District Attorney, but there may be some who don't know what that means specifically, like Jefferson, let's say.
I feel outed. No. They're on to me.
Okay. Like me too. Honestly, I'm like, sure, I know what that is. But so in as much of a nutshell as possible, could you tell us what's the function and the duty of the Los Angeles District Attorney?
Sure. The District Attorney of Los Angeles County is actually different than the City Attorney of Los Angeles because the LA County is comprised of 88 different cities. LA City is just one of 88 different cities. And that covers that 4,000 square miles. So the county goes from Long Beach to Lancaster, from Santa Monica to the San Gabriel, San Fernando, and Santa Clarita valleys.
Wow.
It's huge. We do 180,000 criminal cases every year. We're the largest local prosecuting office in the entire nation.
Did you say 180,000?
180,000.
She was.
Based on our population and our budget, if we were a state in the United States, we'd be the 8th largest state, effectively making me the Attorney General of the 8th largest state. But it's an incredible job, an amazing opportunity, because it's a rare chance, a rare situation where you get to be in charge of all these incredibly hundreds of talented prosecutors implementing an agenda. And the agenda we can talk about is this hard middle approach to rejecting political extremes and really focusing on the evidence and the law to figure out the right resolution in every case. It's been about 16 months so far. a wild ride.
Oh,
I mean, if you had told me that, I'd have to not just have the 6 priority areas I started with fentanyl poisoning, human trafficking, homeless crime, organized retail crime. We had residential burglary and hate crimes as my core 6. And then, January 7th of 2025, I had to add wildfire related crimes.
Oh.
Didn't even know that was a category of crime at the time. But then all of a sudden we had looting, arson, impersonating first responders, unlicensed contractor fraud, financial scams. Add 6 more months to that, and we had the protests. Well, we, the DA's office and law enforcement provided sort of the support for 200,000 Los Angelenos to go ahead and march peacefully. But there was about 500 people that decided to use a good protest, the legitimate exercise of a First Amendment rights, to cross the line into illegal conduct. So these were the folks that were shooting commercial-grade fireworks at police officers. They were running motorcycles into police lines. They were dropping cinder blocks and Molotov cocktails on police cars. And so all of a sudden I had to prioritize protest-related crime and make it very clear, though, that we'll protect people who engage in protected First Amendment rights, but we're absolutely going to prosecute the people who are engaged in this illegal conduct.
Right.
Okay.
I wanted to ask, because I might ask a different question than what I have. We do our research. And so you gave an interview last year based on, I want to get back to what you were saying about the protests. And I thought it was really cool and insightful for you to say that, like you said, 500 people, let's say, in a county of, almost 10 million. And you said it's such a sliver. When you look at it from a perspective of what the media amps up, that's got to be a huge challenge for you as far as like, how do you manage the media when it's trying to sensationalize 2 or 3 blocks of LA? Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things I did was to push back against this narrative that had erupted with the protests, that basically LA was under fire, LA was sinking into a dystopian universe. When I actually did the numbers for people, 10 million people, 200,000, so call it 2% of people are actually marching. That means 98% of the people aren't marching in LA County. But and of the 2% that are marching, roughly about 500 of these people are committing crimes. So it meant that 99.99% of the people in LA County aren't committing any crimes at all. So you had this big political noise going on between the president, the mayor, the governor. And I made it a point to give the facts so that people could correctly evaluate the facts. They could get some context around these images. Because yes, if you see a commercial grade firework go off in front of a police line, and that's all you see, you would assume that LA is in the middle of a war zone. But you're right. It was basically a 3 to 4 block radius right around the Metropolitan Detention Center downtown that was, call it under siege, if you want to use those words, for like a day and a half.
And that was the ICE protest? Is that what we're referring to?
Correct.
Okay.
That was the ICE protest that started small. People also forget that these ICE protests started when ICE decided to go and execute a search warrant in the Garment District and arrest some people that it believed were undocumented and in this country illegally. But what they didn't count on is that when they got there, word got out that they were there. They then got surrounded by a couple hundred people. But they hadn't coordinated and never coordinate with local police or a DA's office. They just don't do it. But now you had a very volatile situation. You had guys with guns that are now surrounded by hundreds of people and they need a way out. They call the local police. Can you please basically get us a corridor to get out? Well, they took those people downtown to the detention facility. Now the people had a target. So now they started to surround the detention facility. And then they called their friends. And then their friends called their friends. And all of a sudden, hundreds of people became thousands of people, became tens of thousands of people. Ultimately, you had over 200,000 people march. Wow. And so you had a situation that was, as the marchers were increasing, though, law enforcement was increasing its resources. So you had the LAPD fully mobilized, the LA Sheriff's Department fully mobilized. They were borrowing resources from the other 44 local police agencies throughout Los Angeles County. So when the president and others were sending in the Marines 4,500 people to protect 3 buildings. What I basically said is, look, if you want to give us some help, I got a lot of great projects for you.
Right.
You want to help us with fentanyl poisoners? I will take the help.
Come on down.
You want to help us with our violent gang problem? Done. Fentanyl poisoning? Done. You want to go after human traffickers? We could use the help. You want to guard 3 federal buildings with 4,500 troops and National Guards people? That's not the type of help we needed at that point. We actually had the situation under control. But again, my goal is to stay out of the politics. If these folks want to have a political fight for their own political purposes, I view that as detrimental to the mission of delivering safety to the people here in Los Angeles County. It is because it's distracting. It's
Absolutely.
noise.
I mean, that makes 100% sense. And I just think about how much, LA is just a big target, right? So many people want to talk about California or trash it or LA. And so as you were sworn into office, these kinds of things started happening. And really, right immediately, a very big case came up, which was the Menendez brothers trial, right?
I've heard of that one.
The case there that was, being reconsidered. So what was it like to walk into that office and immediately have to navigate a case with 30 years of history, as well as kind of putting you again in the spotlight as right at the beginning for your first moves?
You're right. This was a case that I inherited because the prior DA, 12 days before the election, as I argued at the time, he was 30 points down in the polls and he had no money. But what he did have is the ability to file a motion for resentencing that can only be filed by a prosecutor. The defense can't file that motion. But once the prosecutor files it, it triggers the entire process to potentially turn a life without the possibility of parole sentence into a life with the possibility of parole sentence. And what had happened is that the Menendez brothers had been advocating for years, for 30 years, to try and get some different sentence. They tried it originally at the trial. They tried to win the trial. And in the trial, they said not that their legal excuse was sexual abuse. Their legal justification for shooting their parents at point-blank range with shotguns was self-defense. They basically said, we believe mom and dad were going to shoot us the night of August 19th, 1989, so we had to shoot them first. That was their legal defense at both trials. And what we were able to show in analyzing all the transcripts, 50,000 pages of transcripts, hundreds of hours of videotaped testimony. I spoke with the Menendez family members for over 3 hours myself. I spoke with their lawyers. We looked at everything that was filed in that case, and I assembled an incredible team to help me. And what we came out with was that, yes, the Menendezes had done some good work in prison. But one of the key reasons that the governor had indicated that he was willing to parole someone was that they had to show full insight into their crimes and their lies. And what we identified was 16 different lies, the central one being the self-defense defense that the Menendezes have never come clean with. Ever. Because if you remember when originally the parents were shot, the Menendez brothers ran out of the house screaming, someone murdered our parents, we'll torture them when we find the murderers. And for the next 6 months, they persisted in that lie that it was most likely the mafia that had killed their father. Until tapes came out. Basically a tape confession with a psychiatrist where the Menendez brothers each admitted that they had killed their parents. So that defense of blaming someone else was now gone. So they had to come up with the next defense. And it was a series of lies that they tried to tell. They tried to get one of Lyle Menendez's girlfriends to say that she had been violently raped by the father. Wow. She wouldn't do it. But she reported that to the officials, and they had the documents that Lyle Menendez had tried to use to get his girlfriend to say this. Lyle Menendez had another girlfriend that they actually got to say at trial that mom was trying to poison the family. Turns out that they eventually found Lyle Menendez's script to that girlfriend that she said virtually word for word during the trial testimony.
Oh my gosh.
So you had these situations. A lot of these
So you're saying they're not coming clean. Is that what you're saying?
That was our position.
Not crazy amazing. Definitely not.
They were not crazy amazing. Maybe crazy,
but
can't
not
say amazing.
Yeah.
And what we said, if they ever decide to finally come clean and acknowledge all these lies that they've been telling now for 30 years, we'll revise, or certainly consider it, to revise our position on whether or not they should be resentenced and ultimately get out on parole. But we took the position that resentencing was premature, that they hadn't reached that step at this point. The judge said, no, I'm going to resentence. But all that got them was basically a parole hearing. Because if you have life without the possibility of parole, you can't get a parole hearing. But if you now have life with the possibility of parole, California has passed a statute called the Youthful Offender Parole Statute. This statute came down in 2013 and 2017. And here's what it says. No matter what your sentence is, you can get a life sentence. As long as it's life with the possibility of parole, if you commit the crime under the age of 26, so you're 25 or less, and the Menendez brothers were, I believe, 18 and 21, and you serve at least 25 years of your crime, then no matter what your sentence is, in fact, the Menendez's sentence now is 50 years to life, you can get a parole hearing after 25 years. So sure enough, even though now their sentence has gone from life without the possibility of parole to a 50 years to life sentence, they don't have to wait 50 years. They actually got an immediate parole hearing because they had already served 25 years of their sentence. Now, the parole board has to evaluate all these factors. We pointed out to the parole board exactly what I pointed out to you, that it's premature. Turns out the Menendezes also have not been choir boys while in prison. They had a whole number of violations while in prison. So the parole board reached that conclusion that we had been advocating, that right now, no parole for the Menendez brothers. But about every 3 years or so, they can come back for a new parole hearing. So we estimate that they'll probably have another parole hearing, plus or minus somewhere in 2028. And we'll see what happens at that point.
Well, Lyle might get another girlfriend. You might hear another story. you never know.
You never know.
Speaking of which.
Yeah, I know, right? So most of us are aware, the public is aware, of the tragedy involving Rob Reiner, Michelle Singer Reiner. It's been well documented that their son, Nick, who has been charged, has had a history of mental health struggles. So as DA, how do you navigate that hard middle when a case involves such a clear history of mental health struggles alongside such a devastating act of violence?
So what's easier for me to do is rather than talk about a specific case, because that case is obviously still pending. We have not made at this point a decision on whether or not we're going to seek the death penalty. Because what people should know is that when you go ahead and charge first-degree murder, which is the highest form of murder, you can also charge something called special circumstances. So if you get charged with first-degree murder and you get convicted of that, you're looking at 25 years to life. But back to this life without parole or life with a parole, that's a life with the chance of parole. It's 25 years to life. If you get charged with first-degree murder and special circumstances, the only options for a judge at that point are life without the possibility of parole, or if the DA seeks the death penalty, the death penalty. And so we haven't made a decision, for instance, in the Nick Reiner situation, because we have charged the first-degree murder with the special circumstances. One of the special circumstances that we charge is something called multiple murders. So if you kill 2 or more people, that can, by itself, can trigger the special circumstance. And we allege the killing of both the mom and the father with respect to that first-degree murder. But what then happens, whether it's the consideration for the death penalty or the consideration on the defenses and the evidence we'll have to present at trial, is often what was going on in the murderer's mind. Did they have a deliberate plan? Was it a malice aforethought? Was it premeditated? Because that's the hallmark of first-degree murder, is that it was thought out ahead of time. Because other forms of murder that you can charge is something called voluntary manslaughter. That's you've heard of like the heat of passion. Guy comes home or woman comes home and finds her husband in bed with somebody else, grabs the nearest thing and stabs him, or vice versa, he stabs her. That is because that's not
so scary.
Like you do. By the way, if you're married, don't take notes about this.
So what happens though is because it's not premeditated, we don't generally charge premeditated first-degree murder. we would charge, for instance, voluntary manslaughter because you didn't give it much thought. The mental state of an individual comes into play in various forms. So, for instance, if someone is so mentally incompetent that they can't even stand trial, one of the first things a defense attorney will do is they'll declare a doubt as to their mental competency. It's under, they call it a 1368 motion. And it basically has the individual then examined by usually at a state mental institution. They can have their own private doctors examine them to determine whether or not they can understand what's going on, understand the charges, understand the process in order to have a proper trial. Let's assume we get past that. So they at least understand what's going on. They're deemed mentally competent to proceed to trial. Then a plea that can be entered, and I'm not saying it's going to be entered in the Reiner case, but it is a plea that can be entered, is not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, that doesn't say that you're mentally incompetent. You don't understand what's going on. That says at that moment in time, when you killed somebody, you can prove effectively a level of insanity. And there's a very strict legal definition of what that means, dealing again with understanding the nature of your conduct. So when one looks at those type of pleas, or you generally say, look, I was so out of it, I really didn't form premeditated thoughts. So you're arguing against the premeditation. What a prosecution generally will look at is what you did before, what you did during the murder, and what you did immediately thereafter. So if before we can show through a variety of types of evidence that you might have been upset, you might have been very enraged, in fact, but you weren't acting in an insane manner, you weren't acting in an incompetent manner, you weren't acting in a deficiently mentally ill manner. You were just upset or enraged. And the statements that you made, the actions that you take, back that up. Versus you're screaming hallucinatory thoughts and you're acting in a completely, what people would colloquially call an insane manner. Then we'll look at actually how the murder was committed. Was it deliberate? Was it planned? Did you wear gloves? Did you take the type of steps that a premeditated murder would indicate? Did you? Was there a certain timing of it? How did you enter the house? All the different steps that lead up to the murder, and then the actual act of how you committed the murder. What weapon you used? Was it something you brought with you? Is it something you just found?
Got it.
And then there's always the after, the cover-up. What actions, what statements did you make that deal with the cover-up or the escape from the murder? We had a situation that we charged a couple of years ago where after someone murdered 4 people, they decided to burn the house down to erase all the evidence of the crime. Nice. In that type of situation, that would be an additional fact we would use to show that, no, this person was premeditated, deliberate. They knew exactly what they were doing, so much so that they had the forethought that after they committed the murders, they're going to burn the evidence and then try to escape.
Wow.
Got it. I personally just want to say, because I work with NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and I don't know if I speak for our audience, I'll speak for myself. When I hear about, the insanity plea or whatever, you always feel like, is that being misused or is that being manipulated? I really appreciate the fact that you're taking the time to explain the nuance. I don't know about you, Kat.
No, I did not know.
I'm so happy that there is really nuance like this.
Yeah, very much so.
To really try to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you taking this hard middle philosophy. And I think we've heard you say that it's the integrity of the conviction is what you're really looking at with that. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
And so, for instance, we came across that story of Maurice Hastings, which you had nothing to do with, but he spent 38 years in prison for a crime that DNA finally proved he did not commit. So the DA's office, was involved in keeping him behind bars for decades. But what kind of weight does that put on you personally, knowing that there are cases out there like that? And how might that shape the way you conduct bringing up a new thing, your conviction review unit, and how that affects that?
Great questions. And one of the things that I came into office saying is that balance that I'm trying to achieve, which is an accountability and public safety, but mixed with, the most rigorous due process we can give people in the system. And so let me use the Justice Criminal Review Unit, JCRU, as my example. So I'm in the office for about 2 weeks. And I asked J. Crew, do you have any cases of factual innocence that you can present to me? And they said, we actually have one. So they went ahead and I heard that it was going to be a case of a 15-year-old young man and a 20-year-old young woman, gang members. They were prosecuted 17 years before for a gang-on-gang hit, basically. They were convicted. There were 3 eyewitnesses. They were convicted. The judge sentenced them. It went up on appeal. It was affirmed on appeal. But what they said is that what happened 15 years later is that 2 other gang members who actually were incarcerated at that time came forward. And they had details of the crime that were not publicly available, showing that these 2 people, instead of the ones that had been convicted as the shooter and the driver, that with the shooter and the driver were actually different gang members. So our J. Crew unit, working, by the way, with the defense, investigates this case as thoroughly as possible. So I'm being told about this case. I'm saying, well, why did it wait to get to me 2 weeks in? They said, we actually presented it to your predecessor, and he tried to go into court with this case to exonerate these people. So I said, why didn't it work? He said, well, he never contacted the original prosecutor. And the original prosecutor was still in the DA's office. And there was such a lack of trust between the prosecutors who had done all the work and the DA himself, Mr. Gascon, that the original prosecutor went into court to oppose the release on factual innocence. He said, and when I asked why that had happened, the J. Crew people said because the original prosecutor had never been read into the case, the new evidence. So I said, I need a presentation immediately, and I want the original prosecutor sitting next to me when we do the presentation. I got a 2-hour presentation. We went through all the evidence. I asked every question, as did the original prosecutor. And when we were done, I turned to him. I said, would you have brought this case if you knew now all the evidence? And he looked at me and he said, no, that I would have a reasonable doubt that these 2 people had committed the crime. Now, I'll give you some interesting dates. That was Monday, December 16, 2024. And the reason the dates are very important is that once we made a determination that these people were factually innocent and needed to get out of jail, they need to get out before Christmas. So on December 18th, we actually finally got the court. The court said, I said, look, I need a hearing on December 23rd, a Monday. Court said, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, starting on December 23rd. But if you can get them into court by 1:30 on Friday, December 20th, I'll hold a hearing. I'll move some stuff, I'll hold a hearing. So I actually am in charge of 230 investigators in my Bureau of Investigation. And I asked the chief, I said, can you get 2 different cars to the middle of California to 2 different prisons, a men's prison and a women's prison that are in Chowchilla, middle of California. I said, can you get in there at 5 a.m. on Friday, pick these folks up, drive expeditiously, and get to court by 1:30? They said, look, we've never done it before, but we're happy to make it happen. Sure enough, 2 cars went up there. They picked these 2 individuals up. They raced, got them to court at 1:20. I'm standing outside of the court with each of their family members. They hadn't seen their family members outside of a prison setting in 17 years. In fact, the 20-year-old woman was pregnant when she went to prison. Her 17-year-old daughter was right there. She had never seen her 17-year-old daughter outside of a prison setting. So it was a huge embrace. Then we went into the court. And I said, this was going to be my first appearance. And I said, Nathan Hochman, on behalf of the people of the state of California. And the judge looks at me and he says, this is very interesting. I said, why, Your Honor? He said, because I've actually never seen the district attorney at any one of these hearings before. I thought to myself, I said, well, that's a shame because this is a great day for justice. And sure enough, we made the motion to factually exonerate them, and 3 hours later, they were out. And when I gave
Merry Christmas.
And
that was fantastic.
It was a great situation. When we had a press conference right afterwards, what I described to people, I said, look, justice is going to take a lot of different forms when I'm the DA. Often you're going to hear me at a podium talking about arrests, convictions, sentences, and putting people behind bars. But there will be situations where I'm going to set aside a conviction that basically we determined was wrongfully obtained. The people are factually innocent. And I said, justice is as powerful in my doing that as it is in my bringing arrests, sentences, and convictions. And that was it occurred early on when I was the DA. but in many ways has set the tone for how we view and the approach we've taken of this hard work middle, this hard middle approach, where each case has to be viewed individually, and we have to look at the facts and the law every time, and no political agenda.
And it's really crazy amazing that you are giving your individual attention to these various cases that you can. It's really commendable. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
That's
when
incredible.
Katrina and I were doing our research, we were thinking how this is what we love about your hard middle approach, is that no two cases are exactly alike. And there's all these nuances you have to take into consideration. And you are doing that. So yay you.
Yeah.
So Nathan, when we look across the spectrum from, say, and you mentioned a scenario kind of like this too, a young person caught in not serious crime, let's say, to a high-powered executive involved in multi-million-dollar white-collar fraud, the resources they bring to the table, obviously, worlds apart. So, I mean, one can afford a team of the best lawyers in the country, and the other might be navigating the system with very little. So how do you make sure that, I think I kind of know, but I'd like you to, if you don't mind, how do you make sure the hard middle maintains an equitable standard that holds the powerful just as accountable as anyone else?
Again, a great question. It starts with training. When I started, I brought in a new director of training, a guy named Brian Shern, 36 years of experience in the office, one of the most knowledgeable, experienced, and decent people you'd ever meet. He instituted a 4-week training process that addresses, in part, those issues right from the beginning, right when you start in the DA's office, because we're trying to make sure that what we do on our side is exactly the same, whether the person is rich or poor, black or white, from whatever religion or part of this community they come from. That we analyze the evidence, we prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. If we don't get there, I have empowered every prosecutor, and I've said this repeatedly, that you could have charged a case and something could happen during the case where the evidence falls apart. A witness doesn't show up. A witness takes a different position. The defense comes forward with information you didn't otherwise have. You are always empowered to do the right thing. And if that means you need to go to your supervisor and seek the dismissal, seek the dismissal. If that means that you tried to prove 5 things and 3 things you can prove and 2 you can't, dismiss the 2 you can't. You know, that is the approach that we take to protect the rights of everyone there. But you're absolutely right. If someone has a very busy public defender, and the public defenders do as good a job as they possibly can, but they have an enormously high caseload, versus someone who can literally pay for every lawyer in the city. You know, the ability to uncover information, to make arguments, to challenge the law, to challenge the facts is going to be higher with the people who can enlist those type of resources. So it becomes even more important for us to make sure that if we bring the charge, we are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the evidence is going to get us there. And remember, you can bring a charge based on what's called probable cause. That's, less than 50% if you want to use percentages. It says that you just have probable cause to believe that something may have happened. This person may have committed this crime. That's a very low standard. That's the charging standard. But to prove it at trial, you're going to have to convince 12 people, generally 12 strangers, members of the community, who are all going to have to agree unanimously that you proved the charge beyond a reasonable doubt, and every element of that charge. That is, the highest standard in the land. When you almost say it out loud, you're thinking, how can anyone ever prove that? But they bring in that type of evidence, whether it is nowadays, there's so much video, text messages, emails. Officers, most officers, if not all of them now in our county, have body-worn camera. So when they walk into a situation, the camera's rolling. It records people's statements in real time. So you don't have to just have the officer later tell you what he was hearing and seeing. You can actually watch it in real time. And often there'll be more than one officer, so you'll have 2, 3, 4 different views of the same incident going on at the same time. And so again, we've been given a bunch of tools to meet that burden of proof in all these cases. And the prosecutors that do it, they're quite simply amazing. because you can imagine how stressful it is, because you got to get it right literally 100 out of 100 times. This isn't professional baseball where if you bat 333, you're
doing great.
No,
and you'll get a $50 million contract.
Somebody's life.
We
right?
have to bet, we have to get it right 100 out of 100 times.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And you invest in your people in training, which is really
No, and they really, I have a
powerful.
friend whose daughter-in-law is on your team and said you have motivated them, and she is just so excited about having you there. So
that's terrific.
Anyways, I've heard that firsthand. Speaking of all these cases, now tell me if these are correct facts, but I've read that you've inherited a backlog of nearly 10,000 cases. Is that true?
That's correct.
And just as you were ramping up your team, you were hit with a $25 million budget cut that eliminated maybe 150 critical positions.
That's true too.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay. So when you're caught between a mandate from the voters, this is like to fix the system, and a shrinking pool of resources to do it, how do you keep your team's morale from breaking and keep doing more with less? Are you a magician?
Wingardium budget osa.
I wish I was a magician and I
right?
could wave a wand and create more people that could help all these folks do the work. Every time, one of the things I've done is literally have the different sections, and I've got between sections, branches, areas, and units, I've got probably almost close to 50 throughout the district attorney's office, and they've made presentations to me. Almost every presentation ends with, and can you please get us more people? Whether it's lawyers, paralegals, legal assistants, because often, for instance, the head deputy of a branch office, let's say Compton, Inglewood, the Antelope Valley, the head deputy is in charge of all the prosecutors and the paralegals and the support staff, but they've actually had to go into court if someone's on sick leave or someone's on maternity leave, and take care of a court themselves because they're so stretched, so thin. But here's what we've done. I basically said to these folks, I've redefined the job of the DA. I said the DA's job is to maximize the greatest resource of the DA's office, which is them. It's them, it's the prosecutors,
People.
the paralegals, the support staff, the investigators. So I said, if you need resources, I will do my best to fight for them. If you need training, I'll get you the training. By the way, if you need credit for the good work you're doing, if you ever went to any of my predecessors' press conferences, you would swear to God that he tried the case himself, got the conviction and the sentence, because there was no one else up there that he's giving credit for. Every time I'm up there, I look to my right or my left, wherever those prosecutors are, and I said, look, they did the great work. They deserve the credit. And that's part of trying to get that esprit de corps back. My predecessor had a situation where 98% of the prosecutors actually supported his recall. Wow. That's a dysfunctional operation. Wow. No, and I've worked incredibly hard to build that trust back with my own prosecutors because I did ask them to tackle that 10,000 case backlog. I basically said, look, if you're doing it during the day, great. If you want to do some nights and weekends, I'll find some overtime or comp time to give you. Over 10,000 cases is now under 4,000 cases.
Whoa.
And that's in addition to the 180,000 cases that they're doing annually every year.
Oh, my goodness.
So this is
That's
a
incredible. Super
motivated, super talented
Yes.
group. And when you put in, it's nice to just say the word cases, but what a case represents often is that there's at least one or more victims. They might be victims of everything from theft to fraud to sex crimes to violent crimes. And they've been sitting around months, sometimes years, seeing whether or not there's any justice in this county. Often the law enforcement officers work the case up. They got all the evidence together. They got the body-worn camera. They put the packet together and gave it to the DA's office, and it was sitting around. And so I bring the humanity part of it to the prosecutors and say, look, we got to do this for the system. We have to do it for the victims. We have to do it for the officers. And by the way, we also have to do it for the individuals who may be the defendants, because they've been sitting in limbo land as well. And I was a defense attorney for 25 years. When I had clients that literally were sitting in the limbo land, it was a form of purgatory. Are they going to bring the charge today? Am I going to get arrested today? Or are they not going to bring the charge? We owe it to everybody in the system to go ahead and do our job and do it in as timely a manner as we can. And that's been one of the additional pushes that I've done with everyone in the entire DA's office.
That's incredible.
Yeah, building up your team and giving them credit, as you said, I just feel like that's got to, speaking of morale, that's got to boost morale big time. So we have a little questionnaire for you. We want to know you a little better.
Okay.
We want you to be seen. You ready?
Okay.
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. What's your favorite dirty joke? No, that's not a question. Okay, Katrina.
You can't help himself. Okay, I have
Katrina has the first question.
Here we go. So don't think about this too hard. Okay, you're a SoCal native, mountain or beach?
Oh, beach.
Okay, where's the best place to get a hot dog?
Wow. When I'm anywhere near Hollywood, it would be Pink's. But I'll take a Dodger dog any day of the week too.
Nice.
Nice. Where's your favorite place to get my favorite food? A hamburger, cheeseburger.
Well, anywhere that there's an In-N-Out.
And then
although I'm going to go Santa Monica a little. The Hi-Ho Burger.
Oh, the Hi-Ho Burger is really good.
That's a nice.
Yes,
okay, good answers.
Nice.
And then when people come in from out of town, where's the first place you take them?
You know, it's funny. For years, it was the Venice Boardwalk, because it combined everything that was great about California. You had the beach, you had sort of interesting people, you had the souvenir shops. It wasn't there for a while. I probably had a 10-year hiatus, but now I'm bringing people back to the Venice Boardwalk.
That's cool.
Hey,
That's nice.
Well,
bravo, you just
how
passed.
did he do? You passed the test.
That was it. Well done. We hope it was easier than the bar.
Right. All right. So
wait, but the bar only needed 70%. So.
Well, you got 100.
Just a little side note before we jump back into the conversation, I wanted to invite you to officially join our community. If you're enjoying these stories, please just take a quick second to follow us on your favorite audio app and subscribe to us on YouTube. It's really the absolute best way to make sure you never miss a crazy, amazing moment of a human doing good out there. And thank you for helping our crazy, amazing family grow even larger. So let's jump back in.
All right. So here's another question. And it's not a big surprise to know that much of our country is challenged by the crisis of homelessness. And certainly in Los Angeles, we're acutely aware of this problem. So from your perspective as DA and as a lifelong Angelino, what can and should be done to address the homeless crisis in Los Angeles County?
The homeless crisis has to be attacked with every tool in the toolbox. So for 4 years, the DA's office took its tools and went back home. By that, I mean that the prior DA, in his first day, first hour in office, issued 9 special directives. And one of those special directives was the DA's now refusal to prosecute certain misdemeanor violations that are found in many homeless encampments. For instance, everything from trespass to criminal threats to illegal hard drug use, to prostitution, to, again, even low-level violence, graffiti, all was off limits. So what happened is that officers would walk by a homeless encampment. They would see often these criminal violations occurring, and they would keep walking. Why would they keep walking? Because it's dangerous to go into a homeless encampment and arrest people who are committing violations. And they knew the DA's office was no longer prosecuting. Right. So part of the solution and part of the partnership with the DA's office is that we have to be ready to prosecute where appropriate. But being homeless itself is not a crime. I'm talking about homeless individuals committing crimes. And by the way, these homeless encampments are often very much more violent than what I just described. Murders have occurred in these homeless encampments. Large-scale arsons have occurred. Stabbings. We're talking a whole range of very violent and serious crimes in these homeless encampments. So what I have advocated is a group that's been enormously effective in dealing, and I'll focus with homeless encampments, called the HOST team, HOST, Homeless Outreach Services Team. It's a team comprised of deputy sheriffs that have been trained on how to deal with the homeless. They've been paired with people from the Department of Mental Health, Department of Public Works, back when they had it, the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, and they go out as a sort of a big team to a homeless encampment, like the Venice Boardwalk. Like the VA, when they had outside the VA, and there was 75 tents outside the VA in West Los Angeles. They've gone to the Rio Hondo River They've gone to under the 101 underpasses, and they execute a 5-point protocol over 8 weeks. Identify each person, which means go up to them, shake their hand, tell them who you are, get their name, start the dialogue going, and then nothing happens. Show up the next day. Do it again. Offer them some water. I watched this actually happen myself when I went out with the host team. Then they identify each person, then they assess what their need is. Is someone suffering from a mental illness, a drug addiction? Did they just lose their job? And now we can pair them with the Department of Vocational Services and find a job. Are they a vet? And we can get them into the VA and get, they just either were turned down or we can get them in the VA. So that's the second part. The third part is outreach. That's where they actually try to do the outreach between facilities that can deal with these needs and the individuals. Because the fourth part, which occurs 14 days before the end of this, is they post a sign. And the sign says, we're going to move this homeless encampment in 14 days. You're on public lands. You're not entitled to be here. And in 14 days, we're coming with a truck to move everything. Now, by the time that truck shows up on the 14th day, most, if not all the people are already gone, literally. The truck is there almost for cleanup. Because it turns out if you deal with the homeless humanely and with some compassion and some understanding, that they will move and hopefully into situations that are actually meeting the need that they have. Now, the host team for the entire county of Los Angeles is roughly about 20 to 30 deputy sheriffs and associated other members. That's it.
20 to 30 for the whole
county.
But are there 20 to 30 sheriffs plus the auxiliary people that help?
So probably the entire team is about 50.
Okay.
But for an entire county that's 4,000 square miles and has 10 million people.
Okay.
It's one of the most effective and most vastly underfunded, successful operations in dealing with the homeless that both shows them the compassion, but takes a very firm stance at the end of the day. And that sort of mix between, you can call it a carrot or a stick, or you could call it the velvet glove, seems to be and has been enormously effective.
Because they're trying to place them and get them in places that they
absolutely, because they're trying to break the revolving door of what happens with a lot of these homeless people. Because if you ask me, what is the largest homeless shelter in Los Angeles County? Do you know what the answer is?
None, right?
The Los Angeles County jails.
Okay.
Do you know what the largest mental health treatment facility is in Los Angeles County?
The jails.
The jails. The jail system is the largest, by the way, in the nation. Wow. It holds 13,000 people, and they estimate over 50% of them tonight have a serious mental illness.
Wow.
So, but they're vast. The jail is one of the least effective places to treat someone with a mental illness. But our county board of supervisors, and I very publicly come out against them with this, in 2019, when they were all set to build a brand new facility to replace a facility that was built in 1963. They had appropriated the $2.2 billion to build a state-of-the-art 3,800 bed with 1,000 mental health bed facility. And they decided they had a change of political heart. They called it Care First, Jails Last. They paid an $80 million breakup fee to the general contractor because he was supposed to start the summer of 2020. It would have been finished in the summer of 2025. So right now, they said, look, if we're not going to build this big facility, we'll build smaller ones all over the communities. They have built nothing in 6 years. It is one of the greatest derelictions of duty of the Board of Supervisors, maybe in LA County history.
Oh my
because now we're 6 years later, we have no solution in sight, nothing that's been paid for or on the drawing board.
So, just somehow exacerbated everything.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I brought this, everywhere I talk, I bring this issue up because we need a facility that's state of the art. It's got to offer rehab. It's got to offer training. It's got to offer the ability to deal with mental illness. It certainly has to be able to detain people in a very healthy, sanitary at least, set of conditions. And yes, it's going to cost money. And would I love to spend the money on building a beautiful school, a library, a cultural center, anything? But do I believe and I found out it was Dostoevsky who said this back in the 1800s. He said, the way you measure the quality of a civilization, it's not through the quality of its museums, but through the quality of its jails and prisons. I've actually said that directly to the Board of Supervisors.
That is a quote.
That is
what a quote.
And I said, on that metric, we are a complete failure.
Wow.
Our jails are that poor right now. But I bring this up to let people know what's going on in our county. Because at some point, whether it's myself or with the Board of Supervisors' help, hopefully, we'll be coming back to the people and saying we're going to need to have a bond. And it's going to have to pay for a brand new jail. And it's going to make Norway jealous because our jail is so much better than theirs.
Oh, I love that. I know
That'll be our
Norway
goal.
is so notorious for having such good facilities. So, okay, just one little last question on this, which is, so we're our studios here in Santa Monica, and we have the unique issue of being located right on the Pacific Ocean here, where people like to spend the day. We're also at the end of the metro line, having to do from downtown LA. And I'm curious, for your personal take, your advice on like what the city of Santa Monica should be doing, or what they might not be doing right, or what they might start or do. I don't know if you know anything about that. Like, what can be done with the Santa Monica homeless situation, because it's obviously really affected so many businesses. And
I don't even know where to start with the Santa Monica situation. I'm a lifelong Angelino. I was born here. I grew up here. I knew the 3rd Street Promenade before they closed the streets down. When Westwood was the cool place to go growing up. And then all of a sudden they closed those streets in between the streets, and the 3rd Street Promenade was the go-to place for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
It felt like, COVID obviously.
It took a hit. With that.
A huge hit of the 3rd Street Promenade. Santa Monica is now taking a public safety approach to dealing with the homeless. It's that mixture of both a firm velvet glove with giving the homeless individuals the resources to break whatever cycle of or situation has got them on the streets. So if someone needs a job, we'll do our best to find it. If someone needs some housing, it might not be in Santa Monica that we find the housing. They might not get to take advantage of one of the greatest places to spend time or live in the world, but we'll find some housing for them, free housing for them. If they need some medical help, we'll find some free medical help for them. But if you want the sort of services that we are willing to provide, you don't get to choose where exactly we want to provide them. And that, to me, is part of the ongoing debate on how to deal with the homeless. And that's putting aside the folks that are committing actual crimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if they're committing crimes, I have absolutely no tolerance for a hands-off approach.
Right.
Because it just, other than deter crime, which is our ultimate goal, it encourages it.
Nathan, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to make sure to share with our audience, especially for those of us who live in Los Angeles?
Again, it's that information, it really is power. One of the other issues that we didn't touch on, but it has to be touched on at some level besides our jails and our mental health laws and AB 218 is our juvenile justice system. I haven't seen a much more broken system ever. The juvenile facilities that they hold some of the most violent juveniles, we're talking juveniles who've been charged with murder, attempted murder, rape, and other type of violent crimes, are run so poorly by the probation office that the state attorney general has actually filed a lawsuit to put a receiver in place. These places are, the state attorney general charged 30 different probation officers. It's actually down to about 16 different probation officers with running gladiator fights in one of the facilities.
With these children?
With these children. So we have a situation where if I'm going to bring a case against a juvenile, the whole idea behind the juvenile justice system is 100% rehabilitation. Because, by the way, you're out by the age of 25. Now, when I say you're out by the age of 25, someone should understand this. If you're 17 and you go ahead and go into a store and you bring a gun and you shoot a few people because you're committing a robbery and people got in your way and you shoot a few people, unless your case is transferred to adult court and the state legislators made that enormously difficult, you will be out by the age of 25 at the maximum. Often you'll be out by the age of 22 for shooting 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Now imagine you're the family member of someone from that store that just got shot dead by this 17-year-old. Even assume the 17-year-old has no record or has an extensive criminal record. You're thinking, how on earth can this person only serve somewhere between 5 and 8 years in jail, and that's their punishment, and then they're out, they're back. And by the way, often juvenile records are sealed for the most part. So when I explained this to people, I said, look, the overwhelming bulk, 70, 80% of the juvenile crimes never reach the DA's office because they're low enough level that they get diverted by either law enforcement into some program or the probation office. But when juveniles are committing effectively these adult crimes, and the stuff that I have seen on my desk is horrific. Juveniles are basically, they call it murder, rape, torture, mayhem. That's the stuff that reaches my desk.
Wow.
And I look at the victim families who are going and looking back at the system, and they're trying to say, where is that justice? And I have to explain to them that the juvenile laws work this way. And we'll do everything in our power to hold these kids accountable. Because if that 17-year-old literally committed that same crime when they were 18, they would be out in their 50s or their 60s or their 70s, most likely. But otherwise, they'll be out by the age of 25.
Wow.
And so again, information is power. And I go around the county telling people the system, that the criminal justice system that they live in, it's far from perfect. It needs a lot of changes. We're trying to bring changes at the state level with changes in the law, and certainly doing our best to implement the laws that we have as effectively as possible. But people, we need to understand that system. You know, one of the things that we also have been doing is, and this is a slight promo for it, is we came out with our own podcast.
Oh, good.
We call it The Hard Middle.
Oh, I like this. Okay.
And what we've done is I've taken a few of these issues, like youthful parole and elder parole, where again, you know, like the Menendezes getting out without serving 50 years, they served 25. We had a recent case that was even more horrific, where someone committed a double murder at the age of 24, did his 25 years, got out, and less than a year later killed a 54-year-old mom of 6 and grandma of 7, or grandma of 8 children. And we tried to explain to people in the podcast and generally that, look, there are success stories, and we'll applaud every success story of someone who gets out and they've turned their life around. But there's a very dark side that can happen when we're taking these gambles and these risks on people. And people should understand the risk that has been taken for their benefit.
Yes.
So that if you become that victim and that victim family, if you're one of the, I met the daughters of that particular individual who was some incredible person. You know, her name was Fatima Johnson. I will say her name because her name needs to be out there because she was incredible. She was a nurse. She had 6 kids. She was trying to help this individual. And the payback was he brutally murdered her. And so, you know, again, I make it clear that these are the serious discussion that we need to have about each one of these laws. Because otherwise, if you ever become the victim or the family of a victim that suffers from these laws, and then you will look back and go, how on God's earth
was this okay?
did this get passed?
Right.
And someone will say, because someone said it was a good idea and you weren't paying attention to weigh in on this idea.
We need to know.
I ask people to weigh in.
Yep.
Early, often, keep informed, get informed, and weigh in.
That sounds really cool. So it's called the Hard Middle Podcast.
Yes.
It's your podcast.
Yes.
That's amazing. And you explain a lot of issues then. You're going into all these issues. Yeah.
Oh, we do.
That's fantastic. That's an amazing way for people to become educated.
All right. So we are going to pivot here to highlight the things that you do that go above and beyond your day job, you know, and all your free time. All right. You founded the LA County DA Foundation during your campaign in 2024. All right. So this is the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast. What was the quote unquote crazy amazing spark, if you will, that made you want to put your efforts towards creating a philanthropic arm for the DA's office?
So it's the ability to supplement what we do when it's not in budget. So often we have a project that's called Project Lead. And Project Lead actually is a 5th grade classroom project that the DA's office has had for a long time, well over a decade, where we go in with usually two deputy district attorneys, and they teach about the criminal justice system to these fifth graders for over 20 weeks, once a week for 20 weeks. And often they need supplements. They'll need stuff for a party, or they'll need stuff for, even the simplest stuff, pencils and crayons and gifts and toys and stuff like that. And the DA Foundation can help supplement that. When we deal with homeless encampments, the DA's Foundation can help supplement some of the resources that we can bring in these situations. When we deal with one of the other projects that we're looking into are projects in the prisons. One of the best projects I ever saw was called The Last Mile. The Last Mile teaches coding skills to prisoners in prison so that when they get out, they can actually have a productive skill set. And its recidivism rate, that's the rate at which people get out of prison, then commit a crime and go back to prison. The California average is close to 50%.
Is it really?
50% of people will be back in prison within 2 years. It's an embarrassment. The Last Mile's recidivism rate is less than 1%.
Wow.
Because they prove that if you can give someone a skill set while they're in jail or a prison, they have something to do when they get out, they're not going to go back to a life of crime. So we have supported programs like that as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I read a little bit on your website for the LA County DA Foundation. You highlight 3 programs. And so one, I'm going to name them. First, youth education on criminal justice and narcotics awareness. Then victim advocacy and support. And then prisoner rehabilitation and reentry programs. So I was just wondering, what is your vision beyond what you just said with these programs?
So let's focus on victim advocacy. Cool. There are some incredible groups out there that I came to learn about when I was campaigning for DA. And then upon becoming DA, immediately reestablished the relationship between the DA's office and these groups. Now, these are groups you never want to be part of. Justice for murdered children. Justice for again, murdered individuals. They're mostly run by women, mothers who have lost sons and daughters. And they form these organizations not only to deal with sometimes the killers have not been located, so they're a support group to make sure that their son or their daughter's case is kept alive. But when the killers are identified and people are going through this process, they're an enormous support organization because they basically say to these men and fathers and mothers or sons and daughters who've now lost a relative to a brutal murder, we've been there. We understand the grief that you're going through, but we're going to help you try to figure out a way to get to the other end of that tunnel, which seems very dark and very distant at the time they're going through it. It's coming up. This month is National Crime Victims Awareness Month, the month of April. There will be something, it's a week from Saturday in April, where I'm going to go down to San Pedro. It'll be the 3rd time I'm going there. And the Justice for Murdered Children will have they usually have about 200 families right about at the water's edge. And one of the most powerful things that they do is everyone is encouraged to bring shoes from the relative who's been murdered. And they line up the shoes all around the sort of front where people speak. So as you're speaking surrounded by the shoes of people who are no longer with us, who have been brutally murdered. It is incredibly powerful.
Incredible.
But the families in turn are amazing. And these are the types of groups that I'm hoping that the foundation does support, and I'm hoping they can continue to support. Because, the criminal justice system can be very rigid. It can be kind of brutal. We have a Bureau of Victim Services that's amazing. But at the end of the day, when the court's over, they shut the doors and they have to go back home. This is where these additional services are so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is the foundation funded? Can anyone contribute? I mean, I got a couple dollars here. I could just give it right now. But how do we do it for our audience? How could we participate?
It's a 501c3, so it's a tax-deductible contribution. It has a website, so people can go to the LA District Attorney Foundation, donate there. It's the type of opportunity that I have to supplement the incredible work that my office does. And that's
well,
that's
I mean,
a
that's
privilege.
just beautiful that you did that. I mean,
you.
that hasn't existed before.
It hasn't.
Wow. I mean, with all your spare time, but thank you, because you're really thinking about everyone and everything from all angles. It really is apparent and very much appreciated.
Well, you know what's funny? You're trying to help. I mean, ultimately, my job is a service job. You know, the question I ask every day is how I can serve people a little bit better today.
Wow.
And, sometimes it's making the wheels of justice work and making sure they work as effectively as possible for the victims, for the witnesses, even for the defendants. And certainly if people believe that the justice system works, it'll increase the trust and the credibility of the system. Because look at it this way. Back in not so long ago, let's call it 100 years ago, if someone hurt your family, you didn't rely on the sheriff who might not be around in that dusty town. You would take a gun, and if someone killed one of your own, you kill one of them. The old West, street justice. The idea of our criminal justice system is that you have basically outsourced that justice to me, to the DA and law enforcement. You've said, go get me a measure of justice for the harm that we have suffered so we don't have to do it ourselves. Because people doing it ourselves, I mean, that's where you're just one step removed from anarchy.
Yeah.
So I have to keep that trust that people believe that if someone harms them, I can get them a measure of justice. Now, I have a whole lot of rules that I got to follow to get there. Got a whole lot of evidence I got to present. But we keep that in mind every day, that we are been given the trust of an entire society to see if we can bring justice every single day. And that's why I say we have to get it right 100 out of 100 times.
Right.
Because the one case you fail in is the people who will leave that experience and say, hey, LA County doesn't have any justice. And you don't want that ever to be the hallmark that people are going to remember you by. You want them to think that even if they didn't necessarily win, we have had cases where we thought we were right. We tried the case, we tried the heck out of that case. But the system said, the jury came back and they found the person not guilty. By the way, the jury never finds a person innocent. They find them not guilty because that's the standard. It's either guilt or the prosecution didn't present enough evidence, so it's not guilty.
Really interesting nuance.
And we leave it. And often we'll go to the victims. And the victims will come up to my prosecutors and they'll thank them, even if they didn't prevail, because they know that the prosecutors left it on the field, or in this case, in the courtroom.
Right.
And that nothing more that could have been done was done. And they feel, in their case, that as much justice as could have been attained was obtained, even if it did not get them the ultimate result they were looking for.
Absolutely. It sounds like it. I think you're getting that confidence for people, and it's impressive. So another kind of thing you do on the side, let's say, is that we're aware that you and your family have been deeply involved with the American Wheelchair Mission for years, right? And so is it true that your family and you have traveled to 4 continents and delivered over 1,000 wheelchairs to people who otherwise had no mobility?
Yes.
Wow.
Here's how that started. When I have 3 children. I've got now a 29 and 27-year-old sons and now a 24-year-old daughter. But when the oldest son was about to turn 13, he was looking for a bar mitzvah project. And at that exact moment in time, the executive director of the American Wheelchair Mission comes into my office on a small little matter I couldn't even help him with. But I said, what do you do? And he says, I deliver wheelchairs all around the world. And I said, well, what's the power of a wheelchair? He says, if you give someone the gift of mobility, particularly in developing countries, you are basically helping not just them, but 10 people that on average have to take care of them if they can't get around.
Oh, wow.
And I brought this to my son, and we said, this is a great idea. And we went back to this guy, and we said, what can we do? He said, well, we only deliver in ocean freight container amounts, 280 wheelchairs. It costs $42,000. And I said, have you ever delivered to Israel? Because it's a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
He said, we've never been to Israel because we don't have a local partner. So I enlisted Chabad, of all people.
Yeah.
And Chabad said, we'll be the local partner, but now we have to go raise $42,000. So we did some car washes. We did all that sort of stuff.
Nice.
But we decided to make a video where my son is explaining his project. And then I had my son make presentations to corporate boards and family foundations with his video. And when you have a little 12-year-old, 13-year-old make these presentations and explain his mission, they all got on board.
Hearts melt.
That's
But then once we raised the money, myself and my family went to Israel. And we didn't go to the beaches of Israel. We went to orphanages. We went to senior assisted living facilities. We went to hospitals. We visited a village just outside of Gaza at that time that had been bombed, and an individual had lost their legs and was in a decrepit wheelchair. We show up with a brand new wheelchair. He gets put in it by the people with us were ginormous people. They lifted him off. They put him in the wheelchair. We dance around in the wheelchair. And he only spoke Hebrew. And he asked my son a question that was translated to us, which was perfect. He said, who are you? Why, where did you come from? And why are you giving me a wheelchair? And my son gave, in some ways, the classic answer of a child, but it's so pure and innocent. He basically said, because we could.
Oh.
You know, because he was taught that, look, you know, you have, this is the whole notion of this teaching, that you have an obligation to your fellow human beings, wherever they might be, and even if you don't know them, if you have the ability to do something good for someone. So, of course, I have a second son. That mission was in South Africa.
Wow.
He doubled it, of course, because he had to beat his brother.
Of course. Now the throwdown is happening.
That was even more stuff. And then my daughter, she has done one in Vietnam. We went to north of Hanoi and delivered to villages up there. Wow. Then she went to the Amazon. We actually delivered in the Amazon in Ecuador. And then we even went to West Virginia.
Wow. That is fantastic. That
is very inspiring and very crazy amazing. So Nathan, along that spirit, along the same lines, we believe at Crazy Amazing Humans that we all have a role to play in building the kind of communities we want to live in. Kind of paraphrasing what you said. So for our listeners who want to be a part of the solution, we want to be part of the solution. What are some practical ways that we can all participate from your perspective in our communities?
It depends on what you want to do with your communities. Interestingly, because we have an election that's coming up, we have a June 2026 primary, we'll have a November 2026 election. Voting. Voting is incredibly important. You know, I mean, use my race as just an example. Turns out that a DA can truly affect the course of public safety in a county of 10 million people, and that's one person. My predecessor shifted it in a decarceration mode that created a whole bunch of problems. I've now reoriented the approach to a hard middle approach. Again, hopefully solving a lot more of those problems. So that's one person, one vote for one position.
Amazing.
And so we have people running for all different types of offices, whether it's the state legislature, whether obviously we have a governor, we have a mayor's office, city council, board of supervisors, all the different types of office, even your local school board. These are incredibly important positions because if you get people, you can run for it yourself, but assuming you don't either have the time or desire, make sure that the people who get in those positions reflect your values. So voting is incredibly important, you know, and if you want to support a candidate, you know, making sure that they have the resources to run a good campaign, also important. Keeping up to speed on what's going on.
So looking down the road behind this current, you know, beyond this current term, what goals do you still want to achieve? For instance, what would be next for a leader with your extensive experience? Would you want to run again for DA?
You can say it here, Nathan.
Here's the game plan. The game plan is that if I can do this job as district attorney of the largest county in the United States as well as possible, then, you know, in 2028, if I'm considering reelection, opportunities will be open. If I'm considering any other type of office or any other type of public service, the ability to have then say to people that, look, here's the record of 4 years of being the district attorney. And hopefully if I work incredibly hard and you know, and really focus on the stuff we've been talking about today: justice, fairness, equity, accountability, public safety, and this hard middle approach, that, you know, in 2028 or beyond, there'll be additional options I'll get the opportunity to consider.
That's cool.
That's
I like it.
Awesome answer.
I don't know how you're doing it, literally. So I'm really excited, Nathan. And, you know, you just put yourself on the line every single day. and you convinced your loved ones to let you do it.
Oh,
right.
It's pretty amazing.
I have
Teamwork.
a
Teamwork.
superstar rock star wife, Vivian.
Yes, you do.
She is beyond incredible. Without her, I couldn't do it because not only did I need enormous support to actually run for office, which is not the easiest thing to do in this world,
Nope.
but the stuff that I kind of bring home every day, if I didn't have incredible love and support to come home to, it could get dark pretty quickly.
I do have one more question. So when you and your lovely wife have a disagreement, do you bring to bear all your skills as a prosecutor and a lawyer? No, Your Honor, like you're talking to, honey.
Well, you obviously don't know my wife.
Oh, okay, you're right.
My wife is one of the most skilled lawyers in her own right.
Oh, look at.
So
Now, I'd listen to that podcast.
Oh, I'm telling you, she is.
You're gonna have her on?
You probably should.
Yeah.
She's intuitive. She's fast. She's unrelenting.
Wow.
She hyper analyzes what I say. In fact, I told her when I first fell in love with her, I fell in love because she used collateral offensive estoppel correctly in a sentence.
Wow.
I thought, wow.
That is wonderful. And I know she's a UCLA grad, as am I. So.
She's a UCLA grad.
Communications.
And I'll throw this in, and she's gorgeous and sexy. So
Yes.
you throw all that in.
That's awesome.
This is a good marriage.
As a winning combination.
That's wonderful. So we want to thank you. We want to thank your wife, Vivian, and all your family and your extended family for allowing you to be in this position to really take the risks you do, along with the other people at the DA's office who do your work. It is, like you said, people going out there to help people. It doesn't always get reciprocated. It can really work out badly for some people, but you all are obviously, your family, crazy amazing and incredibly courageous. So thank you. So thank you for protecting Los Angeles, our families, and for sharing the human side of the DA's office with us as the DA.
Well, I've watched you and now I've met Jefferson and Ken for years now. And you do crazy, amazing things. So being part of the crazy, amazing family is such a privilege and an honor.
Oh my
and thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. So thank you for being here. Nathan Hochman, you are crazy amazing.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy amazing.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, please make sure to write us at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com.